In The Haunting of Bly Manor, a young woman who's being tormented by a mysterious spectral image takes a job as a caretaker for two troubled orphan children in an old mansion out in the English countryside, where she begins to discover that these kids' problems stem far beyond their parents being gone, and that this stately manor might just be, hope you're sitting down for this one, haunted. This series is sort of a follow-up to The Haunting of Hill House. I haven't seen that one, but apparently it's an American horror story anthology type of thing, where the producers bring various cast members back to play new characters in a new story. I never got into American Horror Story. I watched a few episodes and decided it wasn't for me. By comparison, I think I preferred Bly Manor, but the show definitely has its own share of issues. I'll start with the good stuff. The scenery, set design, aesthetics all look very nice. I can buy this as a haunted house easily enough, it looks the part. The cast is likable, and the acting is pretty good. That tends to not always be the case when you've got young kids in prominent roles, but I actually thought the kids were two of the better parts of this. And generally, I didn't have many complaints about the acting at all. Though there is the occasional awkward moment that makes you think, really? That's the take you want to go with? Okay. And those awkward moments kind of lead me into the two main problems with the show that end up really holding it back in my opinion. Number one, it's not scary, which for a haunted house show is kind of a deal breaker. There's maybe one or two genuinely good scares in this whole thing. The rest of them just do not land. I'm not sure what exactly happened here, but most of the time they'll be doing things that the writer might have thought was scary on the page, but in execution, they just don't work. For a couple different reasons. The main reason is the attempts at scares feel very generic for the most part. Like the doll that moves its head on its own, or the ghostly image that appears in a mirror or something. Just stuff you've seen a million times in a million other things. And the other reason is that a lot of moments that are meant to be scary feel like everyone involved is either trying too hard, not hard enough, or both. For example, there's a scene in the first episode where a character gets locked in a closet and has a panic attack because of reasons. Now, the writers seem to think this was terrifying, but it's not. To be honest, I kind of felt bad for the actress, because you can see she's really trying hard to make this scene work, and frankly, her acting is not the problem. It's the way the whole thing is constructed in the writing and the direction, because she's frightened of the spectral image I mentioned before, but the spectral image just looks goofy. You're not scared of that, so the scene is not scary. And we, the viewers, have no idea what that whole thing is about yet. We don't know why we're supposed to be frightened of this thing, or why the character is, so it comes off like she's having this huge overreaction. Again, not the actress's fault. I thought she did everything she could to sell this, but it was an issue of the writer, director, and cast just being weirdly out of sync. And unfortunately, a lot of the show is like that. Either delivering scares that aren't trying hard enough to be scary, or are prevented from being scary due to the cast and crew just not being able to get on the same page for some reason. The second thing that holds the show back is story structure and pacing. Yes, I know that's two things. I'm counting them as one. Shut up. The story gets off to a slow start, and frankly, it takes way too long to get to the point. The one episode where I felt 100% engaged by what they were doing was the last one. But they took so much time getting there, I had to wonder if it was all even worth it. And it's not like this is a long show or anything either, it's only 9 episodes. But there are times when it feels longer than it is, due to some storytelling choices that just don't work that well. Minor spoilers here. There are 2 subplots that appear to be related to all the ghost stuff going on, and I kept waiting for these things to tie into what's happening at Bly Manor somehow, but they don't. They turn out to not be due to ghosts at all, actually, but much more mundane reasons that are completely unrelated to the ghosts at Bly Manor, which makes the subplots feel like these weird creative detours that, even though they are in the interest of developing the characters, kind of derail the main narrative for a while. And then, around the middle of the season, things get weird. Because, without setting it up properly, the writers introduce a new storytelling device involving flashbacks, hallucinations, and dream sequences, and this gets really confusing for a while because they start using them all at the same time, so you're not even sure which is which. So until you figure out what the writers are doing, which if you're like me doesn't happen immediately, you're just gonna be scratching your head wondering what the hell is going on all of a sudden. There was one episode in particular that was a real slog to get through because of this stuff, and I got so impatient with it, I was tempted to just fast forward to the end so I could get to whatever the point of the whole thing was. Now, eventually it does start to make sense, but the explanation needed to be a lot clearer and a lot sooner in my opinion, because the pacing in the middle part of the season grinds to a screeching halt because of this stuff. And that becomes an even bigger problem, because about 90% of the answers to what's really going on at Bly Manor are crammed into one episode at the end of the season, which to me felt like a lazy and unsatisfying way to dole out information to the audience. I think, ideally, you want the mystery to slowly unfold over these 9 episodes. And they do reveal some things along the way, but the biggest mystery about why this is all happening is kept a complete mystery, totally in the dark, until episode 8, when from out of nowhere they just drop the whole thing on you all at once. And just like with those 2 subplots I mentioned, instead of the compelling backstory it should be, it just feels like another weird detour because they didn't set the stage for this, not really. And the result is, what probably should have been the scariest part of the season instead feels more like a clumsy story dump just before the finale, so at that point any chance the finale had of being genuinely frightening is long gone. But the silver lining is that even though the finale isn't frightening, it is still compelling, because while the scares don't work, the drama does. I wasn't scared, but I was concerned that this person would die or that person would suffer a fate worse than death or whatever, and when the characters started crying because of things I won't spoil, they got me. That part was effective because the characters are at least endearing, and even if you're not scared for them exactly, you do still care about what happens to these people and their relationships. In fact, there's a line at the end that sums up the show really well. This isn't a ghost story, it's a love story. And that's very true. The love story aspect of this I thought was told way better than anything ghost-related, be it familial love or romantic. The characters do feel like a family by the end of the season, most of the drama dealing with family-related stuff instead of things that are supposed to be scary but aren't tended to land fairly well, and there's a pretty touching romance between 2 of the leads that I thought was the best thing the show did. I was genuinely rooting for these 2, because the actors had a lot of chemistry, and weirdly enough, the writers were just better at building a romance than a ghost story. Kind of a weird approach to take with your haunted house show, but hey, at least something about this thing worked the way it was supposed to. So I guess the upshot is that when The Haunting of Bly Manor tries to be a ghost story, it's not great, but when it tries to be a love story and a drama, it's not bad. I think most people will watch it expecting it to be the former, though, so they might be setting themselves up for disappointment. Still, the cast is good, the acting is solid for the most part, and there are enough touching moments that kept me interested, even if the storytelling was awkward a lot of the time. I don't know how Bly Manor compares to Hill House. It feels like a bit of a misfire to me, but I think there are enough redeeming qualities here that it's worth a watch. I wouldn't call it must-see or anything, but if you're looking for a show to help pass the time during quarantine or whatever, you could do worse than this. Tell me what you thought of The Haunting of Bly Manor down below. Comments help me with the algorithm either way, so positive or negative, it's all good. Ding that bell icon and follow me on social media to always be notified when I upload something. The link is down there. Like the video, share, subscribe, make sure you're still subscribed. And while you're here, check out my other videos. I've got movie reviews, TV reviews, commentary on various pop culture type things, and some stuff that's just for fun. So you go watch all that, and I'll be back with more very soon. Until then, do all the YouTube things, and I'll see you next time.